press the red button. Red button. So we were just talking about you smashing through walls and getting stuff done. And one of the things that I've had the privilege of, as have you, is watching the other, take a new approach and try new things and grow over the years. And you have this new emphasis on tailoring the approach to giving information to people based on how they like to receive it. And I'm wondering if you can talk about that a little bit, because yesterday I had a set of ads that I had created a couple months ago, and I had this very nerdy way of doing it with spreadsheets and webhooks, and it was all connected. And the ad was going to load based on the image loaded on a server and all this stuff, and the headline was going to auto load into it. And I had done that my way. And you're giving this information to Mariella, and I remember you kind of correcting me yesterday because I said, "Yeah, well, this is the way." Whoa, back up! Like, it's not about the way you do it; it's about the way she does it, and this is how I'm going to give her information so that she can do her best work on this.
Well, and like in that instance, it doesn't matter how it get done. It doesn't matter how it get done. Wow, that's great. Good job, Jim. It matters. It matters that it gets done. And I do want to acknowledge that while you were setting this up, I looked at you like I had no idea what you were talking about, and I in fact didn't.
No,
I really appreciate you giving me some
I kept
context.
going.
No, that because you started saying, and I almost started laughing because I realized how much deep shit I was in because I had no clue at all where this was going. And I was like, I do? When? And then you made you gave me the example, and you pulled the parachute for me. So I appreciate that. But no, it's discovering how to, and I think this is actually rooted in, as pretty much everything is, past failure. When we had our growth spurt in like that 2016, 2018, early 2019 period, it was filled with just monumental failure and some monumental success, but monumental failure as well. And one of the failures for me was not being able to understand that other people do things in different ways. And even saying that out loud now sounds very, very ignorant. You know, when I think about how I looked at productive capability. And now my goal is to ask someone what they need in order to get something, not say, hey, this needs to get done. It's, all right, this is what we need to do. What do you need for me to get it done? How can I facilitate this or move it on to someone else? And when you look at, this project that Marielle is going to be working on, you originally wanted to show her a new software to work in it, et cetera. And we still might end up doing this the way that you've created. The way that you made is very efficient. But I think the first step in asking someone to do something, in order for them to truly own it, you have to stand back a little bit and let them do it their way. And this is going to sound pejorative, and I don't mean it to, but it's a bit like working with your kids, where you're not going to gain much in what you're trying to do, which is get it done, but also allow them to learn. If you tell them exactly how to do something, you want to say, hey, here's what we're looking for. Here's some approaches I might take, but why don't you tackle it yourself? And then the learning process can begin, because she might find a different way that's just as efficient to achieve the end result. And I'm always focused on getting the thing done, right? And sometimes it takes a lot of horsepower to get something done physically, and sometimes it's a lot of mental horsepower. Like for you, depending on what you're doing, if it's something that's one-off, right, you'll apply a ton of physical horsepower to get something done. Like if it's a one-off video that's only for us, that we're not gonna work with a partner to get it developed. But if it's something that and this is something that's new for you that I've enjoyed watching, to kind of repay the compliment. You've been working very hard at structuring things that need to be replicated in a way that they are replicatable and still at a quality level that we expect, and that our clients expect. But in the past, you would fall in the trap, and I'd be right there with you, because you'll never say this, but the level of work that you can do with your own hands is generally better than what we can get when you're controlling the process and others are working on it. However, that's not a business model. No. Having you hand hewn every single piece of creative that goes out of this company, right, is not a path to sustainable success. Just like with me, having me completely control every client interaction at all times is not a path to success. And both of us have had to find our own way of keeping the quality standard where we want it, and sometimes that fails, and we have to reassess that and improve the process. But always looking at now, all right, I'm doing this, and I'm the first one to do this, but I'm not gonna. It doesn't end with me. It actually needs to continue beyond me. And how do I ensure that this process is repeatable by folks that aren't Matt or aren't Jim?
Yeah, and I think each of us have learned to apply our tendencies for control in the right way. Going back to what we talked about in past episodes, even looking at the different ways that we travel, right? We still get to the same place roughly around the same time.
In this particular case, within 6 minutes of one another, even though you left 24 hours later than I did.
Exactly.
Shocking and very annoying for me. I thought I was going to beat you.
Well, it's a little bit of like, and not because I won the race, but a little bit like tortoise and the hare. I was explaining it to somebody like that, where it's like,
well, and I just want to say, and not caring about the race you won, and I cared about it and I lost.
Yeah.
And you have to enjoy that.
Well, I think that's part of the parable, though, right? Is like I just slow and steady is my MO, and my hope for the rest of my life is that I'm slowly productive and not obeying every single whim that comes to me. And what I think we've both learned is that you have to radically accept that it doesn't matter how someone gets there. It matters that they get there. And we can apply our desire to grab the reins and control situations when either A, quality needs to be determined, or B, for lack of a better term, the crash is about to happen. And that's where I think we can step in and apply what we learned from the past about control to a situation and get the result that we're looking for.
Well, that's where our two particular skill sets mesh very, very well. And I'm gonna exaggerate our peccadillos, but you could, if you allowed yourself, think about one thing forever.
Yes.
And never move forward.
Oh, yeah.
I could allow myself to never put any thought into anything and do nothing but move. Both of those things will lead in a poor result. Where we are at, honestly, at the risk of sounding arrogant, just an absolutely magnificent team.
Yeah.
And not isn't the company's team, you and I as a team. Yeah. Is when you're helping to give me direction and then I give that direction magnitude.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where we used to make the joke of, the irresistible force and the immovable object.
Yeah.
And those that plays very well into both of our natures and allows both of us to play our part. Because if you take it as far as you can in thinking about it, and then you can move on from it, and I can grab it and go, you don't have to worry that it's not moving, because you know it's in my hands and I'm going to move it, and I'm going to move it fast.
Right.
I don't have to worry that I'm moving it in the wrong way, because you told me what way to move it. So it really allows both of us to utilize our strengths, and of course the opposite of those strengths are the weakness, but we negate our weaknesses.
Well, it pushes in a very positive way. It pushes us each out of our comfort zone a little bit. One of my retreats, and this is going to sound really condescending, but one of my retreats, when you would try to push me to move too fast, was just to use really big words. And or just use some technical jargon that I knew was over your head. So you would be like, why can't we just run with this? And I'd be like, Jim, there's 72 points in a pica. Wait a minute.
Now you've confused yourself.
Yeah,
okay.
I've confused my 6 points in a pica, 72 picas in an inch, and we can't do it that way. And you'd be like, well,
all right.
Okay. And, I still feel that tendency sometimes when you're like, hey, can we, how can we get this off of you? And my cowardly retreat is always to be like, it can't get off of me. No, it's not possible. There's only one person in the whole wide world, one human being that can do this, and it is I. And I'll give you an example of that, similar to what we started this conversation with the set that you're gonna take from me and give to Mariella is, what I now rely on is accepting your ability to quickly see many efficiencies in a process, and instead of me trying to curate your experience to what needs to be done, I'm just giving you facts. And instead of you taking those facts and blindly running with them, you're checking those facts, your approach to those facts back with me. A great example was like yesterday. I said, in order for me to get this off of me, all these headlines that were written in separate documents need to be put into this spreadsheet. And I'm the only person that has access to these documents, and I'm the only person that has access to the spreadsheet. And you said, why don't you give me access to the spreadsheet? And I said, okay, that's a good idea. I'll give you access to the spreadsheet. Then you said, well, the documents, why don't I I'll go into the documents and I'll take the headlines out and I'll put them into the spreadsheet. And I said, okay, cool. You say, you know what? Didn't a writer write all those documents? Yeah. Why don't I have the writer go ahead? So
it's the reason why I started smiling is because as you were talking, I started visualizing two cartoons of you and me having this conversation.
Yeah.
And I just went off somewhere, and it was, yeah.
And so what I have allowed in my head is that there are other ways, there's more than one way to do this. And
ultimately you still have the control, right?
Right.
It's still going to come back to you and go, does this meet your standard? And you know that you can say no, and I'm going to go, okay, well, let's go. I'm going to do it again and do it again and do it again, if that's what it takes. Whereas I think in the past, your experience with some parts of this process is that you would work with someone and they would go, well, that's all I have. Well, the answer from me is never going to be that's all I have. And when that does happen, that I've exhausted everything I can possibly do. Like we had a situation where, some timelines got a little screwy on us, and I needed you to step in to complete something. And that when I come to you with that I've exhausted every other opportunity, because I hold that time of yours, both working on creative a high level strategic creative for our clients and high level strategic creative for us, that's sacrosanct for me. The cost of that is astronomical. And I do look at it that way. I literally look at it and go, all right, 10 hours of Matt's time and having is literally costing us tens of thousands of dollars because of how important your strategic creative thought is in our process. So I am incredibly reticent to spend, in air quotes, that money. So that when I do say, hey, I'm not bullshitting when I'm like, yeah, you're my last hope, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I flipped it around, but whatever.
And and I think we could get into this more in future conversations, but somewhere around this time or a little bit before last year, you were sitting down to design a production process with an entirely new software. And I remember you saying to me, I need you to kind of butt out of this. Like, I need you to let go of this piece. Don't worry about how it's going to get made. There's that noise again.
I feel like someone's pouring a lot of water onto a corrugated tin roof right now.
Yeah. It kind of sounds like audience applause.
Yeah, it does. I like it.
But yeah, so it's like when you were sitting down and thinking about this new process and this new software, how did you get there? Like, what did you know for certain based on what we used before? Which I have no shame in saying was Basecamp. I think Basecamp's a great product for a lot of companies.
We still use Basecamp on the client-facing side.
Right.
Because it's simple. And I needed complexity, which is why we went to ClickUp. And originally we had looked at hiring a firm to build the system for me. And we paid a substantial amount of money for them to walk us through their system. And I realized that it was worth it. Not because we hired them eventually to then go one step further and build the system, but because I realized I had to build the system myself. The idea of the JXM OS, which is what I still call it. And every single year, around this time, I'm going to be looking at this as I am right now and saying, all right, how can we improve this? How can we move this thing forward? I'm going to be looking at automation processes inside of the system. And I looked at a lot of different softwares. I am very grateful for ClickUp. I wish they did a crowdfunding when they first started, and I knew of it because I would have loved to invest in the company, because their product, for my mind, for someone who, and I think one of the things that I said is my goal is to be able to run the entire organization from my chair. Think of it like the captain's chair in Star Trek. Every bit of information I need is all right in front of me, no matter how big we get. And that's what this has allowed. And it will be able to scale. I can see how it will scale, where it will scale, how new processes can be put in place. And but it all started with saying, if, just like we did 2.5 years ago, do we still, or maybe 3 now, I forget how long ago now, do we even want to do this anymore? Well, if we didn't, what we would do? Well, we'd start a company. And what would that company look like? And ultimately, we decided that if we stopped James and Matthew, we would start JXM.
Right.
And then we said, well, why don't we just do that? And then we did. And I applied the exact same logic to creating our agency OS, which was, if I knew everything I know now and I was starting a new company, how would I structure the communication system? Well, number one, I would remove email. Email would be an external only tool, no internal email. Mm-hmm. I would remove texting around, like talking about projects, et cetera, et cetera. Everything would be written. The reason why is it allows for accountability, traceability, as well as clarity. And I would want people to be able to say, I don't understand this. Can you explain it again? And things get written out, they get tracked. So moving to a completely written communication process as far as things operationally in the company. I mean, we still have meetings on occasion. We talk with each other creatively, etc. But the act of doing is kept within the OS itself. And now we're going so far as to trying to move the act of thinking into the OS. How I write business briefs, how you write creative briefs, how we write media briefs, all those things. We're going to be moving the art of thought into the OS. That's what my primary goal is in this next iteration, which we're going to have rolled out by the first day of January of 2023. Here is the new way of thinking, because we've done a absolutely phenomenal job of keeping things rolling operationally once we know what has to be done. Where we need to improve is taking, well, I know what needs to be done. Matt, or Jim, knows what needs to be done, and then disseminating that knowledge.
It seems like one thing I've noticed, and this goes way back to the early days when we first met, and then hearing the stories of you before that, where at one point I think you kind of cut your teeth as a sales manager.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying you had this big giant board in your office, like Dr. Strangelove, the big board, but that you tracked everything. And then over the years, watching you apply a very similar organizational methodology to various CRMs, there's nothing that I've seen you get more enjoyment out of than destroying an old CRM and rebuilding a new CRM.
It's fun.
Yeah, and it seems like some of those principles that you learned in doing all of that have applied to the agency OS.
Oh, absolutely. So much, in fact, that as you started saying that, I realized now, man, we probably could have had something like this a lot earlier had I realized that I enjoy this.
Yeah.
And I was so caught up for a long time in that cloud of, being the customer's man,
Yeah.
And being on the client side of the business, which I still very much am. But that's because I'm good at it. And that's not that I don't love it or enjoy it. I do. But who I am is most represented in the operational side of me. Sitting there with the information, the data, the numbers, watching the system, ensuring the system is doing what I want it to do, optimizing it, and squeezing every single ounce of efficiency out of the entire company that I possibly can. Because to me, efficiency is dollars, and the more efficient we are, the more cost effective we can be for our clients, and the more profitable the organization will ultimately be.
Does it give you the ability to unplug easily? One thing I've noticed about the OS that you've built, at least for me, and I know I'm a bit of an outlier on my own
getting you solely, I will eventually get you into the system. Right now you're like one of the you're a red pill in the Matrix.
Yeah.
And you show up and you blow some things up, and you do stuff, and then I think I'm gonna get you, and then you grab a phone and you disappear on me. So one day I'm gonna get you jacked into the Matrix. I just don't know how.
I guess all I can say in a joking way is how the tables have turned. Because you used to play that role of
I was the outside agent of chaos,
the foil.
Yeah.
But my personal approach to it is to use it like I would use any other platform that I would log into and check, email or otherwise, which is as a place where information is stored, interaction is necessary, but it's not my primary charge to be in the system. Like I can picture a day when you have multiple screens up, like dashboards and things like that, because you're not watching it in real time per se, but you're also the guy that everybody goes to for the answer, and you have those answers now readily available. You don't need to, unless it's a creative
No,
function.
I know pretty
Right.
much where everything is. I mean, I sitting now in December, I other than, events that, pop up, which do happen, I know exactly how our production schedule is going to flow pretty much through the end of next year in broad brushstrokes.
Yeah.
And yeah, in my insane operational world, would I be able to have not Matt the person, because this unpersons you, and I don't want it to do that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Matt as a creative resource within the company, right? Because those are two different things, right? You're both my business partner, but you're also a resource that has to be managed. In a perfect world, I would be able to have it so that you wake up in the morning and you're like, well, it is time for Matt to think about something. And you sit down and you go on the computer and, Matt, think about this today. And you're like, I will think about this thing. And you're sitting there and you just start processing it like some sort of insane computer.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not how your process works.
Right.
What I've discovered is I can actually have that if I approach it, which I think goes all the way back to the beginning of this, if I approach it in the way that's best for you. And what's best for you is you need to be aware of everything you should be thinking about and kind of the end timeline of each of those things. There's only two things that Matt should be thinking about this. And this is our end goal for when we have to get this over the finish line overall as an organization. Which has led to two things. One, your toy box. For the company, you have a dashboard that anytime you feel like doing something for the company on our own marketing or our brand, you get to walk over, you get to open up your toy box, see what's in there, and go, what do I feel like playing with? And that's how I picture you walking over. You're opening up this chest, you're looking in,
Yeah.
and you're like, I don't know about that. Oh, hey, it's Optimus Prime. Hell yeah! And honestly,
Yeah.
if it were me, if Optimus, you'd always pick up Optimus Prime, because what the hell else would you possibly want to play with more than Optimus Prime?
I had a lot of GI Joes.
Yeah, I was a Transformer guy. They were good. The other areas now, not assigning a bunch of specific tasks to you, even though you do have them, because one of the maddening things about you is you will let your tasks go overdue, and then you'll change the due dates on things. And no one else does that, so I haven't kept an eye on it, but I'm learning that
Yeah.
I need to watch things a bit closely, because you'll just keep moving due dates on me, and then I'll be like, oh, son of a bitch, he did it again.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't affect anything, which is one of the things you've taught me, is like, well, if it doesn't affect anything, why does it matter? And
Yeah.
I've been able to kind of absorb that, but making sure that the high level project itself, your name is on it, my name is on it, and there's a end due date attached to it. Like yesterday, we were talking about some projects, and I said, yeah, this date here, there's no fluff, there's no room. Like this is it. Because that I build in time, because going way back to the beginning of our relationship, I always lean on the idea that it doesn't matter how long it took; they'll always remember how good it was.
Yeah.
And I have the luxury of leaning on that.
Well, so do I, because if I got nothing, then we have nothing. And
And I can't go, Matt, don't have nothing, have
right,
something.
right. And so I use that as a way to remind myself that I can keep a steady pace, and that's okay. And honestly, our worst work has come when, through many, many different variables, I'm rushed beyond the point that there's going to be inequality, whether that's a high level demand from a client, like get this done by Wednesday or else. And it's like, okay, well, it's not going to be very, I don't care if it's good or not, just get it done, which we've had those happen before.
Yep.
Thank goodness it's not anybody that we retain as a client
No.
anymore.
Well, that's kind of
Yeah,
thing.
that's a litmus test now. But I've also, I mean, I've had you and multiple other forces try to coerce something to get done faster. And
Mike Emanuel.
yeah, well, there's that situation. There's others where, we have one client that God love him, big lovable bear of a guy. He will complain often about how long something takes, but then also heap on the praise when he realizes that it took that long because of how good it ended up being.
Yeah.
And so when you have an efficiency minded individual, what I think we've learned in our partnership is that you know when to push and when to back away. And if I do my job right, I'm consistently reinforcing that it was worth waiting for whatever that thing is. It might take longer than either one. I don't have this desire to stretch things out any longer than anybody else.
But the way that I kind of control that is usually I really want to follow up with Matt on this. All right, I'm not going to. So you'll notice inside of ClickUp, I'll make notes about things and I'll go back and go, ooh, I've been kind of worried about this for 3 weeks now. All right, now I'm going to, before the very inkling, then I would come to you. Now I let it build because normally what's funny, there are so many times where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to mention something to him today and then I don't. And the next day you show up with the thing.
Yeah.
So you've also done your part in showing me that while I'm sitting on my hands, yours are doing the work.
And when I'm distracted by the conversation about when it's going to get done, it also shuts me down because I can fall into the performance trap just like anybody else can. And now I'm not thinking about getting it done. I'm thinking about the fact that it's not done yet, which is like two very different ideals. And if I'm not careful, I can slip and tumble down that mountainside of this is never going to get done. I'm going way too slow on this. And so I'm also leaning on my ability to ignore that noise and focus as a way to reward myself when it gets done. And it might be, lately it's been more inspiring to rise to the challenge than, prolong it in some instances where you'll say, hey, I really need you to tackle this. We have no other choice. And I'll go, I didn't get that done by Wednesday, but it's done on Monday. And I'm just playing with it on Tuesday and Wednesday because I like seeing how quickly, I can get there. But that's just a fun, challenge for myself. But more often than not, I don't know this to be true as like someone has said it in a scientific sense, but the same place that worrying about a deadline comes from is also the same place that good ideas come from.
It draws from the same well.
Yeah, and so like you can accidentally constrict the idea pipeline with all this worry or this concern or this, and it's not something that you're doing deliberately, but if it's a follow-up, it can be, hey, just checking in on this, want to see where it's at. And, there's a moment of panic, not because I'm like, oh, I've got to get this done. But if I still don't have anything, it reminds me that I don't have anything.
Yeah.
And so I end up in a place where I'm like, oh my God, I don't have anything. It's like one of our shared favorite movies is Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And there's a moment in that movie which I've experienced as a musician and a band member, where it's a battle of the bands, and the band Crash and the Boys is on, and Sex Bomb, the band that Scott Pilgrim is in, is waiting. And the band goes into this crazy song with this wonderful riff. And the lead singer of Sex Bomb is freaking out while everyone else is standing still because he's convinced that these guys are going to win, that Sex Bomb's music is absolute crap, and he's bouncing back and forth between all the other band members going, I can't believe it. How are we going to keep up with this? And so I have that little man inside of me that is there when I don't have anything yet. And I have to just lean into the faith that I know I will have something good. And so I'm constantly, the follow-ups, can cause me to second guess myself. And I know you wield that very, very carefully now, because otherwise I'll go down I'll trip and fall and tumble down that mountain of like, I'm stuck in this place of, I don't know what it is, but I know it needs to be done. And the longer that I don't know what it is up against that hard deadline is there, the more likely I am to focus on the anxiety of it not being done.
I really hope you name this tangent the little man inside of me.